Hello everybody, welcome to Stonx Music. My name is Ollie and today we're going to be having a look at Compressor in this deep dive episode. Let's go! So here we are in the Ableton manual and this is a huge chunk of information, so let's just jump in. A compressor reduces gain for signals above a user settable threshold. Compression reduces the levels of peaks, opening up more headroom and allowing the overall signal level to be turned up. This gives the signal a higher average level, resulting in a sound that is subjectively louder and punchier than an uncompressed signal. A compressor's two most important parameters are the threshold and the compression ratio. The threshold slider sets where compression begins. Signals above the threshold are attenuated by an amount specified by the ratio parameter, which sets the ratio between the input and output signal. For example, with a compression ratio of 3, if a signal above the threshold increases by 3 decibels, the compressor output will increase by only 1 decibel. If a signal above the threshold increases by 6 decibels, then the output will increase by only 2 decibels. A ratio of 1 means no compression, regardless of the threshold. The orange gain reduction meter shows how much the gain is being reduced at any given moment. The more reduction, the more audible the effect. A gain reduction above 6 decibels or so might produce the desired loudness, but significantly alters the sound and is easily capable of destroying its dynamic structure. This is something that cannot be undone in later production steps. Keep this in mind, especially when using a compressor, limiter, or sound loudness maximizing tool in the master chain. Less is often more here. Because compression reduces the volume of loud signals and opens up headroom, you can use the output control so that the peaks once again hit the maximum available headroom. The output meter shows the output signal's level. Enabling the makeup button automatically compensates the output level if the threshold and ratio settings change. Dry-wet adjusts the balance between the compressed and uncompressed signals. At 100%, only the compressed signal is heard, while at 0%, the device is effectively bypassed. The knee control adjusts how gradually or abruptly compression occurs as the threshold is approached. With a setting of 0 dB, no compression is applied to signals below the threshold, and full compression is applied to any signal at or above the threshold. With very high ratios, this so-called hard knee behavior can sound harsh. With higher or soft knee values, the compressor begins compressing gradually as the threshold is approached. For example, with a 10 decibel knee and a minus 20 decibel threshold, subtle compression will begin at 30 decibels and increase so that the signal at minus 10 decibels will be fully compressed. Compressor's display can be switched between several modes via switches in the bottom corners of the display. The collapsed view shows only the essential controls. The transfer curve shows the input level on the horizontal axis and output level vertically. This view is useful for setting the knee parameter, which is visible as a pair of dotted lines around the threshold. The activity view shows the level of the input signal in light grey. In this mode, the GR and output switches toggle between showing the amount of gain reduction in orange or the output level in a darker grey. These views are useful for visualizing what's happening to the signal over time. The attack and release controls are essential parameters for controlling the response time of compressor by defining how fast it reacts to input level changes. Attack defines how long it takes to reach maximum compression once a signal exceeds the threshold, while release sets how long it takes for the compressor to return to normal operation after the signal falls below the threshold. With auto release enabled, the release time will adjust automatically based on the incoming audio. A slight amount of attack time, 10 to 50 milliseconds, allows peaks to come through unprocessed, which helps preserve dynamics by accentuating the initial portion of the signal. If these peaks cause overloads, you can try shortening the attack time, but extremely short times take the life out of the signal and may lead to a slight buzziness caused by distortion. Short release times can cause pumping as the compressor tries to figure out whether to compress or not. While generally considered an undesirable effect, some engineers use it on full drum kits to give unusual sucking effects. Careful adjustment of attack and release times is essential when it comes to compression of rhythmical sources. If you are not used to working with compressors, play a drum loop and spend some time adjusting attack, release, threshold and gain. It can be very exciting. A compressor can only react to an input signal once it occurs. Since it also needs to apply an attack-release envelope, the compressor is always a bit too late. A digital compressor can solve this problem by simply delaying the input signal a little bit. Compressor offers 3 different look-ahead times: 0 milliseconds, 1 millisecond and 10 milliseconds. The results may sound pretty different depending on this setting. Compressor can be switched between 3 basic modes of operation. With peak selected, compressor reacts to short peaks within a signal. This mode is more aggressive and precise, and so works well for limiting tasks where you need to ensure that there are absolutely no signals over the set threshold. RMS mode causes compressor to be less sensitive to very short peaks and compress only the incoming level that has exceeded the threshold for a slightly longer time. RMS is closer to how people actually perceive loudness and is usually considered more musical. In expand mode, the ratio can also be set to values below 1. In this state, compressor acts as an upward expander and will increase the gain when signals exceed the threshold. For more information about the various types of dynamic processing, see multiband dynamics. In addition to these modes, compressor can be switched between 2 envelope follower shapes that offer further options of how the device measures and responds to signal levels. In linear (lin) mode, the speed of the compressor response is determined entirely by the attack and release values. In logarithmic (log) mode, sharply compressed peaks will have a faster release time than less compressed material. This can result in smoother and less noticeable compression than lin mode. Notice that the lin log switch is not visible in compressor's collapsed view. Sidechain parameters. Normally, the signal being compressed and the input source that triggers the compressor are the same signal, but by using sidechaining, it is possible to compress a signal based on the level of another signal, or a specific frequency component. To access the sidechain parameters, unfold the compressor window by toggling the down arrow button in the title bar. The sidechain parameters are divided into 2 sections. On the left are the external controls. Enabling this section with the sidechain button allows you to select any of Live's internal routing points from the choosers below. This causes the selected source to act as the compressor's trigger, instead of the signal that is actually being compressed. The gain knob adjusts the level of the external sidechain's input, while the dry-wet knob allows you to use a combination of sidechain and the original signal as the compressor's trigger. With dry-wet at 100, the compressor is triggered entirely by the sidechain source. At 0%, the sidechain is effectively bypassed. Note that increasing the gain does not increase the volume of the source signal in the mix. The sidechain audio is only a trigger from the compressor and is never actually heard. Another note that automatically makeup is not available when using external sidechain. On the right hand of the external section are the controls for the sidechain EQ. Enabling this section causes the compressor to be triggered by a specific band of frequencies, instead of a complete signal. These can either be frequencies in the compressed signal, or by using the EQ in conjunction with an external sidechain, frequencies in another track's audio. The headphone button between the external and EQ sections allow you to listen to only the sidechain input, bypassing the compressor's output. Since the sidechain audio isn't fed to the output and is only a trigger from the compressor, this temporary listening option can make it much easier to set sidechain parameters and hear what's actually making the compressor work. Compression tips. This section presents some tips for using compressor effectively, particularly with the sidechain options. Mixing a voiceover. Sidechaining is commonly used for so-called ducking effects. For example, imagine that you have one track containing a voiceover and another track containing background music. Since you want the voiceover to always be the loudest source in the mix, the background music must get out of the way every time the narrator is speaking. To do this automatically, insert a compressor on the music track, but select the narration track's output as the external sidechain source. Sidechaining in dance music. Sidechaining or ducking is a dance music producer's secret weapon because it can help to ensure that bass lines, or even the whole mix, always make room for the kick drum. By inserting a compressor on the bass or master track and using the kick drum's track as the sidechain input, you can help to control problematic low frequencies that might interfere with the kick drum's attack. Using the sidechain EQ in conjunction with this technique can create ducking effects even if you only have a mixed drum track to work with, as opposed to an isolated kick drum. In this case, insert the compressor on the track you want to duck, then choose the drum track as the external sidechain source. Then, enabling the sidechain EQ and select the low pass filter. By carefully adjusting the frequency and Q settings, you should be able to isolate the kick drum from the rest of the drum mix. Using the sidechain listen mode can help you tune the EQ until you find settings you're happy with. Compressor's internal algorithms were updated in Live 9 in collaboration with Dr. Joshua D. Rees of the Centre for Digital Music, Queen Mary University of London. Live sets that use Compressor and which were made in earlier versions of Live will show an upgrade button in the title bar of each instance of Compressor when loading the set in Live 9. Press the upgrade button in order to upgrade that Compressor instance to the latest improved algorithms. Note that this may cause your set to sound different. Okay, so there's loads to go through in this one. Let's jump into Ableton, we'll set a bunch of compressors up and see what we can do. Right, so here we are back in Ableton, and this time I've started with my main template. Now this is the template I use for all of my drum and bass, all of my dirty bass music basically. This routing gets me some real nice pump in without having to worry too much about setting up my sidechains every time. And there's a couple of tricks here that it doesn't mention in the manual that I think are worth mentioning for fast, aggressive music. So this is my template. It looks really simple, but we have all of our stuff in here: bass, pads, effects. That's all inside this everything else channel. Our drums at the top and our sub bass here. At the very top you can see sidechain trigger. Now this is turned off, both of these, kick and snare. Let me just turn them on so you can hear what it is, and it's just some white noise. So, from my experience and my research, when you are trying to get your sidechain to react quickly and get that nice tight pump from room for your kick and snare, you can set up the sidechain to take from your kick channel or your snare channel, but I find the white noise gives you much more clarity and focus when you're trying to set up your sidechain. So inside our drums channel we have kick, snare, audio and kick, snare, MIDI, and then we have our hats channel with our tops and breaks, and I usually end up adding a few more channels in there, but this is just what I have for the default. So the hats have two sidechains on them, one for kick and one for snare, so our hats are going to duck when the kick or snare plays. Now reminding you, it won't be when the kick or snare plays, it will be when we tell it to in these sidechain channels. And then down here on our everything else channel we have bass, pads and SFX. Each of them are just blank apart from my remove sub frequencies on the bass, and everything else has these same two sidechains, kick and snare, and they are both taking from the sidechain kick trigger and the sidechain snare trigger respectively. Really hard ratio, and these thresholds are set up because I'm always using the same sidechain trigger. I don't have to go and chase my different kick drums and snares with the threshold, so that's just already set up for me. Feel free to use this template. I'm going to have the project file in the description for you. So let me just Control Z a bunch to get my little things here back, and we will have a look at using the compressor normally, and then I'll go back, I'll write some drums, and we'll have a look at how that sidechain works. So what we have here, I'll move this across, just got a kind of paddy sound. I'll turn the compressor off. It's just nothing too fancy, but it's just there, and I've used this big long note that kind of tails off. So if you turn the compressor on at first, this is how it will come in our nice basic mode. We've got our output level, we've got our threshold, ratio, attack, and release. Now, personally, I don't really like this mode. It doesn't have enough information for me. I almost always use this middle one to set up, because you can drag your ratio up and down. You have your knee here, which you can expand and contract, and you've got your look ahead. I find this much easier to kind of set up what you're looking for. Then once it's set up, we can move across here and see what's going on. So this first view, I don't find it that helpful really, so we'll skip ahead because everything that's in here is also here. So let's turn our ratio all the way down and have a little listen to what it sounds like. So let's give it a real high ratio so we're going to be able to really hear something, and pull that threshold down. Now let's have a listen. You can hear how crushed that is. And you can see with the gain reduction there, it's now actually getting louder over that tail period. Now if you were recording bass or guitar or something that you wanted to sound organic, this would be a horrible way to set up your compressor. But I'm using extremes to hopefully show you what would or wouldn't be nice. So let's have a little listen. Let's see our thresholds around here. So let's take the threshold up and bring the ratio down a bit and increase our knee. Remember that our knee means as it hits this line here, it's going to start its compression. With a hard knee, it's not going to do anything until it hits that dot there. So we'll expand our knee out to give it more room. Look ahead we'll leave for the moment, and let's have a look at this gain reduction. So that's just really catching those peaks. Let's move it over to the next mode and we can actually see what's going on. So that's showing you the gain reduction. Let's look at our output. So you can see there that that is not peaking over that threshold, it's squashing it all down. Now if we go to RMS mode, let's have a little look. You see that initial peak has gone over that blue line. So RMS mode is going to allow some of those transients through. We've got some drums here and it'll be a bit more apparent on that. So let's go, let's look at this once more. And we see the way this line is taking a long time to get up. So let's adjust our release, or let's click auto first and see what they do to it. It looks pretty much the same. So let's take the release right down. If we give it a bit more of the ratio. Give it a bit more look ahead so it's got some more time. There we go. Now you can see it's catching those peaks a bit better. And if we go 10 millisecond. Let's check the output, see what it's doing. And now, because we're at RMS, you can see all of those peaks are going up. So let's put it on peak mode again. And because our ratio is so high now, you can hear that distortion coming back because it's really squashing the noise floor up. And especially on this kind of sound, I would say that's not desirable. But it's good to know what sounds bad in order to help you find what sounds good. So for this kind of sound, I don't even know if it really needs compression, but I would probably bring the knee up a bit more and have quite a subtle. So without. And with. So I'm just using it to kind of tame those initial peaks there. And this isn't really a sound that needs compression. I just thought it was a nice way to show you how not to do it with a threshold right at the bottom, ratio right the way up. You can hear how choked. Look how much gain reduction is happening here. So let's come over to these drums. This is just a little a break that I've grabbed from some funky stuff. I've had to warp it into time here. Let's have a look at what we do with the compressor for this. So one of the things that I do quite a lot with these funky breaks, if we want to extract a certain part of the break, we can use this expand mode. So if we go here, I'm going to take the threshold down so it's catching a good bit of these big hits, but not so much the tiny hi-hats. Let's increase the ratio. Let's release. Let's attack. Then with the release time, we can get a bit more sustain on those hits. Let's give it some look ahead. So now you can see the gain reduction is doing the opposite. It's showing you where it's boosting up. So you still see that little hi-hats being caught, so you might need to bring the threshold up a bit. Again with it off. So if we duplicate the drums, bring this one over here, let's have a look at a couple of the other modes. So we'll go up to peak mode first. Hit our output. If we take this threshold right down here somewhere. So you can hear that hiss has been brought up. You might want to grab an auto filter after here or an EQ or whatever it is you want to do. Take our resonance up and it's somewhere up here, isn't it? It's a high end hiss. That's doing quite a good job, I think. I mean, that's if you wanted to slam the drums. That's something to be aware of, is your noise floor you want to be taking out. Let's do another duplicate here. Move across, Control L. Get rid of the auto filter. Let's listen to on RMS mode and see the difference of where it's actually catching these peaks. So let me print this down and we'll have a look at the difference. We'll go audio track, resample mode, record, boom. So on first look, I wouldn't say there's a massive difference, but you can definitely see these secondary hits here being brought up. Let's just take the compressor off. Have a listen to this one. And this one. So it's brought out the cymbals, it's brought out everything else because you've squished it down to bring those things out. So it is going to give you a bit more of that punch, it's going to give you some more of the background noise as well. So really what I think the most important thing to be looking out for when you're setting up compressors is threshold. The threshold is when do you want this compressor to start working. So when the threshold is all the way up here and our sound is down there, you can see this little yellow dot. It's never reaching this yellow dot. It's not activating the compressor. So threshold, where do we want it? Let's bring it down so it's just catching peaks. That's quite a nice way to be using it. We'll go back to this mode and have a look. So fast attack, fast release. We can put a bit more look ahead if we want it more accurate. So now it's kicking in. What is it doing? Well, it's got an extremely high ratio, so it is going to be turning it down a lot for the little that's going over. So you can see that's doing a good job of catching those peaks. So that's going to be really nice for giving you a bit more control and a bit more headroom in your mix. If you've got these big peaks poking up, if we had a limiter after this, those peaks would be hitting that limiter and triggering that. So that's giving us a bit more control. So that's our general compression. Let's have a look at what probably all of you care about a lot more, and that is the sidechain. So give me a minute, I'll be right back with a beat and with some nasties. Alright, so here we are. None of the sidechains are set up at the moment, and this is what we have. Nothing too exciting, but it's all there. So we have a sub bass down here, we have our main bass in the everything else group, we have our hats and our break, and we have our main muscle kick. So let's come up here to our sidechain triggers, and it's quite a simple one. I can actually just do this and duplicate it. So we have dum diddly-dee here, and let's make them a little bit longer. So this now becomes our attack time. Just doop 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 doop. Actually, let's be smart about that. Instead of doop doop doop, let's hit loop and we can just stretch it out. And then the snare one's going to be easy as well. It's going to be on our 2 and 4. Loop is on. Let's pull that across, and then we probably want them a little longer too. So let's have a listen to just the hats. And with the sidechains off, so it's just helping to duck those elements out of the way whilst we get these muscle guys going. So we'll all of this together. then let's have a listen to our bass down here. So you can hear it's just that little pump, that little suck, and it shouldn't be too noticeable in the track. If it is, you can adjust your settings. But it's just giving room for everything. So one more time, let's have a listen. Maybe bring the threshold down on the snare one. I feel like some of these kicks might be interfering a little bit. Let's do the little trick. Control J this all together. I'm going to come to beat mode. We'll set it to 8ths and then we might go 16ths. We'll see. Sub bass, we don't want any of the ducking. That's all the way down here. There shouldn't be any frequencies interfering with that. So the sub bass has none of that sidechain. So that's left completely alone. So the next thing we can do with this, instead of just using it as moving stuff out the way, you can use sidechain as a creative instrument. So let's move over here. Let's create another little bass line. Control Shift M and then Control L to loop it. I'm going to bring the same drums over. So let's have a bass line with some nice long notes. Go. And then I should probably make those long notes. I said long notes and then I did stab notes. Sorry. So now with our sidechain we could set up something kind of funky. Let's come up here, add some MIDI to our kick and we'll just go, probably want it twice the length. And what should we do? Let's just do this for now and then we'll add something in as we go. Jing, jing, jing. So then that's a little basic rhythm. We could try adding some more inflection-y bits on there, like a da-dungs. Some da-dung. Let's put a da-dung here. Let's go up, 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 up. Da-da. So that's just a creative way you could be using the sidechains. I find whenever I'm writing this kind of drum and bass nasty stuff on the spot, it just sounds cheesy and crap. You got to spend, I say you've got to spend, I've got to spend a long time kind of resampling to kind of get anything sounding nice. That's just me. I find myself getting really anal about this stuff. Let's Alt-T for here and record in resample mode, and we'll just solo this bass line and see what we have. So if you have a listen to this, so you can see where it's been cut up. You can physically actually see where that signal has been chopped. And because we have the white noise and it's really quite sharp, you can see it's doing it for the length of time that we are actually specifying. So that's a cool, nice little way to kind of use sidechain as an expressive motion. And then we could, the next section you could not have the sidechain on, and it's as simple as not putting those bits in, and you'd all of a sudden now have a different section. So exactly the same bass MIDI we have down here, but without that sidechain, it's not doing that little bit of pumping. So here I've done one or the other. We could also do both. So if we were to duplicate this one, and we could call you creative. Oh, don't know what happened there. Get rid of that, and then down here in our everything else, we could duplicate the kick one and make this one come from creative instead. So now we can still have our original, move that there, still have our original pump in, which is making way, and then we also have the creative one here for doing that. So now we've got So when you're setting up your sidechains, this is what I find personally for me the nicest way to get good amount of control. I can change the length of my white noise to give me a longer or shorter attack, whereas if it was set to your kick, you'd still get some good effect. I mean, we can do it. Let's do it quick. Let's come from here instead. Let's go to new kick and let's set this one to snare, and let's just hear the difference. Probably be more obvious over here. So that's only on the hats. Let's have a listen. Compared to having it set to our kick and our side chains, our triggers. So I feel like that leaves us more intact and does less of the kind of sucking and stuff like that. So that's the way I go about using Compressor. We can either squash some sounds together, we can help it to bring out some transients, we can help it to just control those transients a bit, and then we can use it for sidechain to really get some of that pump in and make room in our mix for those big basses and those big kicks not to be interacting too much. Alright everyone, thank you very much for watching this video. As always, project files are in the description. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about Compressor that you might not have known before. Maybe you didn't know about the white noise trick. Let me know in the comments below, and please like, comment, subscribe and all that good stuff. Help us build this channel, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much.